Professor V Rajeev Gowda.
Maiden speech.
Vice Chairman, sir, thank you for the opportunity to speak about the performance and the potential of the power sector. Sir, one of Karnataka's greatest sons, Mokshagundam Vishveshwaraya, is reputed to have studied under a street lamp. He went on to become Diwan of Mysore, set up banks, all sorts of institutions, and in the power sector, he built dams across the Kaveri and the Sharavati, ushered in the hydroelectricity era in India. Yes. So that one street lamp gave an opportunity to Vishveshwaraya to unleash his potential and make an extraordinary difference to India, to give us that confidence in our industrial and commercial capability. God alone knows, sir, how many talented other children of India do not get access to even a street lamp that would allow them a chance to grow, to study, to prosper, and to contribute. Therefore, I urge our Power Minister to make access his primary priority. Power Minister, sir.
Please.
Right. उसके लिए बहुत
Please, Minister, please listen.
Sir, Power Minister, sir, I'm giving you a mantra, Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya. Let that be your motto. Let us give access to every single Indian. So you're a very lucky man. You inherited a flagship project from the UPA, the Rajiv Gandhi Vidyutikaran Yojana. This project, by the end of January 2014, had already electrified more than 1 lakh villages and met its target. It had provided electricity to nearly 2.76 crore people below the poverty line. I'm happy to see that the new government has reaffirmed its confidence in this program by allotting rupees 5,144 crores in the budget. Congratulations on that. So, while this project has been a success, there is a much larger challenge in the larger country. Census 2011 revealed to us that 45% of our rural households are still without electricity. And our definition of electrified is not even ambitious enough. We say that if 10% of a village houses are electrified, that village is electrified. That is hardly what we should aim for. 300 million individuals are under-electrified. They have access to the grid, but they don't have access to either quality or quantity of power when they need it. When children are studying, when food needs to be cooked at home. They experience regular blackouts. That is a situation that we must change, sir. So when our people's access to energy is limited, there are some sections that are affected more than others. For example, our women are extraordinarily affected by lack of power access. A large number of them spend time collecting firewood and cooking, often being exposed to pollutants and through indoor air pollution. For the sake of our sisters, sir, I urge you to set very ambitious electrification targets. Only when we can meet such targets will we truly liberate our sisters from household chores. Then, when every woman has access to power, you give her a chance to study. You give her a chance to walk the path towards economic independence and empowerment. So limited access to power also comes in the way of modern methods of providing quality education. We want to harness computers, but if schools don't have electricity, how can we provide access to education through these new technologies? Children who don't have access to energy already underperform, drop out of school, become unemployed. That is the energy dimension of the poverty traps. To get out of this, please ensure that every household gets lifeline power, 100 watts, that will enable children to study, to charge a mobile telephone, to perhaps watch television. So, how do we produce so much energy to ensure this access? There are multiple ways you can go about this. One method is the method of ultra mega power projects. Big is beautiful. So, but Mahatma Gandhi taught us that there is another method. Small is beautiful. That may be more appropriate for our rural conditions at the current time. Gandhiji dreamt of an India where every village is self-sufficient. And energy is a key element of this self-sufficiency. If we want to make the Mahatma's dream a reality, we must establish off-grid decentralized solutions in every village. This means that every village will create its own unique mix, own power source, based on the locally appropriate combination of solar, wind, and biomass. Is this possible? Sir, technology has evolved. It has become more affordable. I would urge the Minister for Inspiration to look at the example of Rajiv Gandhi and Sam Pitroda, what they did in the telecom sector. We were very, very worried that India is not going to ever meet a target of wiring every home and connecting people to a telephone. But by investing in new technologies, by leapfrogging over landlines, we were able to put a mobile telephone in practically every Indian's hand. That should be the inspiration for off-grid technology that would make a huge difference to providing power to every Indian. Sir, let me suggest one other dimension to off-grid power supply. Each one of these local power setups can be established and run by a village-level entrepreneur, somebody that you train to manage, to set it up, to manage, to repair, and to collect money for the electricity that he provides to the entire village. That will create a whole new generation of youngsters who will be able to sustain themselves while they sustain the cities, the villages that they're part of. Talking of cities, sir, whenever I fly over a city, I'm amazed to see the number of solar rooftop water heaters. This gives us a suggestion that we are on the verge of creating a nation of solar rooftop producers if we can set the right incentives in place, if the technology can become affordable enough. So the minister has the capacity to provide the incentives to make this happen. He can help electricity companies draw power from the people and reverse the way we think of this entire technology. This will also call for imaginative legislation that will enable a whole new arrangement to be put into place. This will also require technology to be in place that will allow smoother inputs to the grid from these decentralized power producers. So I would urge the minister to make that a priority. So as we think about all these new ways of doing things, I call your attention to the finance minister's announcement in the budget that he'll set aside funds for a new Deen Dayal Upadhyaya Gram Jyoti Yojana. This program aims to segregate the feeder line that goes to households from the feeder line that goes to agriculture. So this model may have worked in Gujarat. Gujarat is a power surplus state. But it may well be a huge waste of capital to apply this across the country without paying attention to the conditions in each state. There are better alternatives, sir. Through you, I urge our smart young minister to focus instead on smart grids. The UPA government has already launched a number of pilot projects in the smart grid arena. A smart grid involves much more than just smart meters. These help discoms manage the grid better and charge people differentially based on peak hours and peak loads. It gives people the information that will enable them to make appropriate choices themselves. And smart grids also allow renewable energy to be integrated into the grid in a much more effective manner. Since each state has its own unique challenge, smart grids will be a better investment than feeder separation across the country, and I urge the minister to pay attention to that. So, I'd like to turn to the issue of energy efficiency. Our minister belongs to a party that proclaims its concern about India's rich heritage. So I humbly offer one method through which they can walk the talk. Our country has evolved a very rich diversity of architectural traditions which tailor buildings to their local climatic surroundings. Many of our old buildings and monuments embody such knowledge in the way they use solar passive design, the way they're oriented, possibly through thick walls, through mud insulation, by having huge courtyards and jalis for cross ventilation. So we're in danger of losing this traditional knowledge. We mindlessly construct ovens and then install air conditioners to cool ourselves. We've got to go beyond this. I can assure you that there are numerous experiments going on in this direction, and they need an impetus. They need knowledge sharing to ensure that architects, city municipal corporations, building and design codes can change to adapt to all this. One leading IT company in my city of Bangalore has embarked on this kind of sustainable building program and has managed to already save crores in energy costs as a result of this. I urge the minister to create a compendium of such traditional knowledge, to share it with the larger community so that such energy-saving techniques of our tradition become relevant to the 21st century. So, implementing many of these ideas involves working across different ministries, developing synergies with other ministries, for example, urban development. As India urbanizes rapidly, our cities and towns are wallowing in waste. They are unable to manage their garbage. But we read about other countries having a shortage of garbage for their energy production plants. So we must pay attention to world-class technology that will allow us to convert waste to energy, while at the same time ensuring that we don't have hazardous emissions and that we have very strict controls on how we go about doing these things. So this leads me to environmental protection. After many years of 8% plus growth under the UPA, the global slowdown has also affected us. So the new government will naturally be tempted to grow at any cost, and power is vital to growth. Yet I urge the minister to exercise restraint. If we take shortcuts with our environment today, future generations of Indians will pay the price. We cannot also take shortcuts that will give short shrift to the rights of our tribal citizens who inhabit resource-rich forest areas where many of our fuel sources are existing. So, the latest data from the WHO shows us that air pollution kills roughly 7 million people globally every year, especially in Asia. We only need to look across the Himalayas at our neighbor, China, to see how its focus on unbridled growth has resulted in heavy damage to health and quality of life. An entire generation of Chinese children are growing up in cities without ever being able to know what a blue sky means. Let us learn from China's mistakes. Going forward, sir, I urge the minister to adopt new ways of thinking. For example, life cycle thinking, which would allow him to choose between different technologies, taking their entire life cycle into account. Ecosystem thinking, to ensure that externalities are factored in. Our ministries often work in silos, sir. But the world outside Shram Shakti Bhavan is an interconnected, complex web. The minister must balance India's growth with the rights of communities and people to livelihood and the conservation of our rich biodiverse ecosystems. The minister needs to look no further than the Planning Commission's recent report on low-carbon inclusive growth for ideas on how to achieve this balance. God has endowed us with black gold. We should focus on becoming global leaders in clean coal technologies. That could be our strength. We should avoid launching projects instead that would damage our environment and hurt the livelihoods of marginalized communities. Already, environmental impacts are beginning to show. We saw landslides in Kedarnath, recently outside Pune. As we speak, a recent landslide in Nepal has threatened to cause devastating floods downstream in Bihar. These are not merely natural disasters, they are partly the result of human mistakes, where we paid little heed to nature and her ability to cope. We have to urgently correct our mistakes and approach nature with the reverence and understanding she is due. So, with so many portfolios merged together and entrusted to him, our power minister resembles Lord Krishna's Vishwarupa Darshana. He is coal, he is power, he is renewable energy. I urge him not to let his coal and power dimensions to overwhelm his renewable sides. The great power that he's been entrusted with carries with it a great responsibility to ensure a sustainable, energy-rich future for every Indian. I wish him well, sir. Thank you.
You made very valid points in your maiden speech.